Hi everyone, welcome to part 4. Okay, Harikrishna has just played bishop a4. Carlsen continued with the very strong rook d7, which penetrates to the 7th rank decisively. Nimzovich again would certainly be impressed with this game. It's a positional beauty. This offers the exchange with bishop takes d7 and e takes d7, but you know, this would be a crazy sacrifice to accept, and Harikrishna instead went for queen e4, which is the most aggressive way to look for counterplay, centralizing the queen and pressurizing the f5 pawn and the b4 knight, although Carlsen has both of them covered with his queen for now. Another consistent feature of Carlsen's play is his piece harmony and safety. Playing instead bishop takes d7 leaves black even worse after e takes d7, and white will be a piece up before long due to this passed pawn. Play might continue with rook a8, now knight c6, supporting the d8 queening square, queen b3 check, king h2, and queen e7 is coming next for white, and decisive queening of the d pawn. So after queen e4 in the game continuation, Carlsen played rook takes c7. There's no more bishop takes d7, and now white goes up in material for the first time. And this pawn on e6, which his kingside initiative earlier in the game created, is causing black great grief in this game. As before, white has excellent positional control here, with total domination of the c file, whilst the black rook stays miserably out of the game. Moving it along the back rank will allow queen e7, which will surely be winning for white in the position as it stands. Harikrishna now played h5, again going for counterplay, and after the game Carlsen said that he was unsure of his winning chances in this position, despite being the pawn up. The engine certainly gives him a big advantage at around 1.5 pawns, meaning that he has a positional advantage to go with his material, but the winning plan is apparently not certain from this position, at least as far as Carlsen was concerned, and I think we can trust his judgment. Here he played king h2, and you know, this is just a useful waiting move, getting his king safe from any potential tactics and so on. And it was after black's next move, king h7, that Carlsen felt there were suddenly winning chances again after queen f2, which is allowing the knight on b4 to drop. The queen can just snap it off here. And this is by far the strongest move, queen f2. The ability to calculate and play such moves is one of the many things that make Carlsen one of the best players in the world, if not the best, and perhaps even the best of all time. Harikrishna dared not accept the knight and played instead rook g8. Let's see what would have happened if he had. So queen takes b4, queen g3 is the move for white, and there's now no satisfactory defense for black. The two main tries to defend the mate here on g7 are queen f8 and rook e7. The queen is supporting the rook here. So in this position would come queen g6 check, king g8, rook c8 check, rook e8 is best. Now queen f7 check, king h7, queen takes h5 check, king g8, rook takes e8, bishop takes e8, queen takes e8 check. It's 2 pawns up and a relatively easy win. So that's that one correct. And if queen f8, now would come the only move to maintain the advantage, rook f7. This forces the queen away, has to defend g7 because of the mate threat, and h8 is best. giving the king some breathing room. So now will come queen g6 check, king g8, it's the only move, and now the decisive rook a7, which attacks both the bishop with the rook from a7 and also the rook on e8 from the queen on g6. So this means that the bishop is forced to stay on the a4 to e8 diagonal. So let's say, for example, bishop b5. Now comes queen f7 check, king h7, queen takes h5 check, king g8, queen f7 check again, king h7, now queen g6 check, king g8. And now that we've achieved the ideal position, we can play rook b7, where black actually has to give the piece back here and go into a similar position 2 pawns down. He's pretty much obliged to play queen h6 here and fracture his pawns at the same time. You know, and white's just going to go into a winning endgame after that. What else can he do? The bishop is attacked, so let's say, for example, he plays bishop c6 thinking he can attack the rook. Now black will get mated with queen f7, king h7, and rook b4, with the rook h4 coming. So a very nasty trap. So in order to avoid this, black is forced to give back the bishop and, as I said, go into a losing endgame. So presumably seeing this coming as well, so one grandmaster setting the traps, another one finding his way out, or perhaps not daring to take the offered piece because he's playing Carlsen and he knows that his calculating skills are superb. So instead of that, Harikrishna played rook g8. Carlsen continued with knight a6, and the engines preferred queen f3 here to simplify into a winning endgame, but Carlsen prefers to keep the queens on and retain mating threats, as well as avoid the pawn structure damage after queen takes f3. The main idea with knight a6 is to play knight c5, forking the queen and the bishop, and simplify in a more favourable way into an endgame for white. And Harikrishna buckled under the pressure and played bishop e8, which is a semi-blunder. Better was bishop b5, where best play goes knight c5, queen e5 check, queen g3, queen takes f5. White is willing to give the pawn back because he can now play e7, and this passed pawn constitutes a sizable advantage. So bishop e8, and rook c5 is how Carlsen continued, which shows that another of his ideas after knight a6 was to play knight c7, which again is going to simplify to a win, especially now the bishop is on e8. Obviously that wasn't his intention when the bishop, before the bishop had moved to e8, but it is now a threat with the knight c7 and taking the bishop and going into a winning queen and rook endgame. You know, and now that white is ahead of material, there are many ways to bring the point home. So Harikrishna continued with queen d3, and this allows knight b4 with tempo, and a later knight d5, which is going to be a very strong square for the knight. So Carlsen instead went for this instead of the knight c7 idea, because he's going to get here in 2 moves, but 1 tempo, because it's attacking the queen on one of them. And this allows black a couple of checks: queen d6 check, king h1, queen d1 check, queen g1. And you know, these checks, I don't know, they force white to do something, but they don't really change anything in the position, and in actual fact the second one in particular probably helps white. And it's important to notice again the coordination of the white pieces. Everything but the knight is defended, and it's going to move on the next move, and it's very hard for black to make threats of any kind due to this coordination and solidity. He is tied down to a totally passive position, and he's been faced with defending for most of the game. Here Harikrishna played queen d6 to at least keep the queen active, and this ties the rook to defending the knight. If it wants to move, if the rook wants to move, because the knight is now pinned and it's undefended, and that doesn't actually matter because the rook is defended by the queen, so knight d5 can be played, supported by the rook. And this is a great central square for the knight, and it's too dangerous tactically for black to challenge it with bishop c6. Harikrishna played instead rook f8, aiming to solve some of the pressure on his position. If instead bishop c6, queen d1 is incredibly powerful, threatening knight takes f6 check, which is going to win the queen, and also threatening queen takes h5, which is mate. And this latter move prevents queen takes c5. Rook is hanging in this position, but it doesn't matter because of the mate threat. So black is forced to play king h6 to defend. Now would come queen c1 check, king h7, knight takes f6, g takes f6, and rook takes c6 with an easy win. So we see that, as usual, there are tactics backing up the positional grip that Carlsen has created. So rook f8, and now queen d4, which is a very strong centralizing move, again threatening knight takes f6 check and winning the queen. And black is virtually busted at this point. Harikrishna played king h8 to avoid the tactic, but now Carlsen can penetrate to the back rank decisively with rook c8, and black has virtually run out of moves here. His queen needs to defend his rook so that the bishop is able to move, and he can't move his king due to the knight takes f6 tactic, and the bishop shouldn't move for a reason that you'll see shortly. Thus the only option is a queen move, so black is forced to leave his bishop pinned after something like queen a6, at least attacking the rook. But now white can play rook d8, maintaining it on the 8th rank and keeping control of the d file, and black is even closer to zugzwang with knight c7 looming to exploit the pin that the d8 rook has on the f8 rook, and with the bishop in the middle. However, in the game Harikrishna played bishop c6, aiming to at least simplify the game and ease his defense, especially by getting rid of both the pin on his bishop and exchanging either the d5 knight or the c8 rooks. All very logical and sound, if indeed it works. However, he resigned shortly after making this move, and indeed his position is now totally lost. If you want to try and spot how, then please stop the video now. Knight takes f6 is the move, a very nice tactical shot, offering up the queen, which of course black cannot accept without getting mated. The correct move here is something like queen e7, simply accepting the loss of 2 further pawns than what he had on the last move, after rook takes f8, queen takes f8, and knight takes h5, after which black is toast. Accepting the offered queen leads to a mate in 1. Queen takes d4, rook takes f8 is mate, whilst taking the knight, which he takes f6, it's going to drop the queen. Queen takes d6, black wins the rook, but this pawn on e7 is going to win the game. So it was a truly fantastic positional game from Carlsen. In the next round he is facing Anand, and in the interview after this game he said he was not intimidated by Vishy's apparent return to form, so it will be very interesting to see how it goes. With this game Carlsen pushed his live rating even higher, and thus remains the highest rated player of all time, and as I've said before, history in the making. So I hope you enjoyed this game. Please leave any comments or thoughts. Thanks very much.